Okay. Yep. All right, that's working. Okay, I'm going to begin by saying something that's heretical. There may be people here who will unfriend me, including Frankie, who maybe he read this. He always has my sermon beforehand, so he'll know when to advance the slides for the people watching at home. So I think this was punishment to me, but I'm going to say it. Pastor Christian, thankfully, is not here, or he would definitely not ever talk to me again. Melissa and Mike Petrusky, others. I'm just going to say it because I believe it's the truth. I think Popeyes makes better chicken sandwiches than Chick-fil-A. I just do. I'm sorry. I know people will disagree with me. A recent survey I saw agrees. I saw something a couple months ago. They have a new chicken sandwich. It's amazing. Now, I will say Popeye's service is terrible, just awful. Like here in Piscataway, not friendly at all. Like it's just, yeah, not even the least bit friendly. Deb and I, about a month ago, were on the road and stopped at a Chick-fil-A, first time in a while. And again, the sandwich was good. Don't get me wrong, it's very good. It's just Popeyes edges it out. I'm sorry, it does. So the people there, though, are like ridiculously friendly. Like they're so happy and, hi, welcome to Chick-fil-A. And, you know, they're just nice to you. And, you know, as people from New Jersey, the whole time we're just kind of thinking like, what's up with these people? And, you know, did they drink the Kool-Aid? Like, you know, it just doesn't seem right. They're all so pleasant. When it comes to customer service, you can't touch Chick-fil-A. Every single year in the ratings of all fast food restaurants for customer service, they win every single time, year after year. A lot of it's because they were founded by a man who was a devout believer of Jesus Christ. And he wanted his company to be all about customer service and treating people the way Christ would treat them. Matter of fact, a very large number of them are owned by believers, by Christians who are really trying to make it their ministry. And one of the reasons it's closed on Sundays is because the founder wanted to set this example. Pastor Rick Warren once talked about being with Dan Cathy, who's the founder's son and the CEO of Chick-fil-A. Dan was in Southern California where Rick Warren's church is, and Chick-fil-A was putting in some new restaurants. And so the two of them got together, and they were visiting one of the sites of a new restaurant that was being built. And Rick said they were hungry, and so they went to, he thinks it's a Taco Bell that they stopped by. But they go into the Taco Bell. He said our hands were dirty from the site, so we went immediately to the bathroom. We washed our hands. He said after we finished washing, he took some extra paper towels, Dan did, the CEO of Chick-fil-A, and he said he started wiping down all the counters and making them look really nice. And so Rick said, wow, thank you, Dan. And Dan said this. He said, Rick, we teach our staff to always leave any place they are at better than it was when they found it, whether it's our place or not. Now, nobody at Taco Bell knew that the CEO of Chick-fil-A was cleaning their bathroom for free. But that's just the kind of heart that this guy has. It's a great example of the attitude that Christ has called us to have. But few of us follow this example. We know God has called us to serve. We know we're supposed to help others, but so often we fail to do it. You know, we think someone else can do that, or, hey, God, you know, I don't really know what I could do for you. Well, Jesus would say there's a lot of things you could do for him. But here's the thing, serving God won't necessarily get you any glory. You might not be noticed by anyone except the Lord. Today we're concluding our series on the parables. We're going to be heading into an Advent time, but today we're going to be in Luke chapter 17. We're going to learn how we can keep serving even when it's difficult. Now, did you know that the word servant is used in the Bible over 1,000 times, which means that this is an important concept and something God is big on. When the Apostle Paul would introduce himself in his letters, he would often start with these words, Paul, a servant of Christ Jesus. Romans chapter 1 is an example of this. He tells first who it is, I'm Paul, and then he explains who he is. I'm a servant of Christ Jesus. It's this fundamental identity. Let me ask you this. What's the difference between a servant and a volunteer? A volunteer picks and chooses when and even whether to serve. A servant serves no matter what. A volunteer serves when it's convenient. A servant knows that they are always committed to serving. Someone said the servant does what they're told when they are told to do it. The volunteer does what they want to do when they feel like doing it. Notice here, the volunteers on the left. First of all, they all have volunteer shirts on. You know, we want to make it clear, like, hey, we're just nice people. You know, we're not being paid for this. We're volunteering. And look how happy they are. The guy on the left, just a nice, like, this is fun. The woman next to him, that smile, like, this is the best day of my life. Like, this is great. And then the redheaded kid next to her, he's like, yeah, this is good. Maybe not as good of a smile, but he's still got a nice smile. Behind him, the two ladies back there still smiles. Now, there is the guy at the far back who didn't get the memo. You know, big smiles. We're all happy here. On the right-hand side, here are the servants. First guy, yeah, I'm doing my job. I'm working. I'm serving. Second woman, kind of a little bit of a smile, maybe hiding there. The third person, yeah, that woman there, good smile. She's got a nice big smile. And then at the end is just the young man who's doing his work. Because serving isn't always fun. Jesus didn't recruit volunteers. He called us to be servants. Listen to these words from Carlton Kuhn. He says this, everyone in our church is a servant. Jesus never asked his followers to give a few hours of their day off. He did call them to give everything for the sake of the kingdom. Most church volunteers have to be cornered, coddled, and convinced that their participation won't take up too much of their time. The church, he said, doesn't need more volunteers who give away spare time. We need servants whose lives belong to the Lord. So the issue is not whether we should serve, but where is God calling us to serve? One day Jesus revealed the importance of serving without being thanked for it. He said this in Luke chapter 17, where he says in verse 7, suppose one of you has a servant plowing or looking after the sheep. Why will he say to the servant when he comes in from the field, come along now and sit down to eat? Won't he rather say, prepare my supper, get yourself ready and wait on me while I eat and drink. After that, you may eat and drink. Will he thank the servant because he did what he was told to do? So Jesus begins this parable, this story that has a moral point, saying this. Suppose one of you had a servant plowing or looking after sheep. Now, the word servant here is the Greek word doulos, which could be translated as bond to slave. This basically means a servant is attached to the owner. It seems in this scenario that there's only one servant that this farmer has, and so he has to multitask throughout the day. He'd go do back-breaking work of plowing in the field, we read, and then he'd go do the mind-numbing work of watching sheep. So he goes from muscles screaming to screaming from boredom. And then he'd have to get up the next day and do it all over again and again and again. Maybe it sounds like your job. Well, my guess is that over time his daily responsibilities became routine. This would not be thrilling tasks. Let me state the obvious. Sometimes serving is not fun because we're called to be faithful doing ordinary tasks for God. Serving involves exertion. It often exacts a price. After working all day, the servant comes back to the master's house. It's time to relax, right? Worked out in the fields, been watching the sheep. Time to sit down. Absolutely not. What does Jesus say here in verse 7? Well, instead, he says, will the master say, come along now and sit down to eat? No, is the answer. Won't he rather say, prepare my supper, get yourself ready, and wait on me while I eat and drink? After that, you may eat and drink. So the servant has moved from outdoors to indoors, from daylight to dusk, from hard labor to home life, and he goes from the fields to now fixing food. Don't miss this truth. A servant is to serve whenever, wherever, whoever the master says they are to serve. One of the best places that we can exhibit servanthood is in our homes. I mean, if husbands and wives would truly serve each other, marriages would be so much better. If their kids would serve one another and their parents, the family would get along so much better. If your roommates would serve one another, the relationships would be so much better. All too often, though, we're all about ourselves. Well, I suspect some of us, too, feel like we've already put our time in. We've already done our hard labor, and now it's time to relax. But Jesus would argue that if we're alive, then we're called to serve. The location and intensity of our service changes with the seasons of life. What you can do now maybe isn't the same as what you could do when you were younger. I see Pastor Christian running around. He's in seminary almost full-time. He teaches as a teacher at Piscataway Middle School full-time. He's got 2 little kids. He's our associate pastor. I don't know how he does all that. He's young. He's got energy. So, yeah, it changes as we get older. But the fact is we're all still called to be servants of Christ. The key is to be a servant, not a slacker. So the issue, again, is not whether we should serve, but where we should serve and who we should be serving. After going all out and working from sunup to sundown, the servant in this parable is undoubtedly tired. A word of thanks would have been appreciated, I'm sure. But it doesn't come. Look at verse 9. Jesus says, will he, the master, thank the servant because he did what he was told to do? Now, the strong implications, no, he wouldn't do that. The word thank means to have gratitude or to be grateful. The idea is if the master expresses gratitude, then it's as if he owes the servant something, as if the servant has gone above and beyond what they needed to do. The reality is they simply did what a servant was to do, which was to obey their master. Some of us think that God somehow owes us for what we've done for him. But we're servants, and therefore we must serve. 1 Corinthians 6 says this, do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. So we're not entitled to words of appreciation. Our focus so often is on our feelings, while this servant is focused on doing the job. Too many of us serve with too great of expectations. This gets us frustrated. And so maybe we determine never to serve again. No one thanked me. No one noticed. That doesn't matter if no one noticed. God saw it. He's ultimately the one who will reward us, and we need to remember that. But remember that God does not need us to serve him, but he's called us to do it. He's the one we're ultimately working for. Never forget Kevin Campbell. Some of you knew him. He was one of our deacons, and he passed away a few years ago. But Kevin had this good sense of humor, and he loved to just bust on me. And I was just sharing with someone this morning how Kevin, when he was greeting at the door, and I walked over, and he's like, give me a hard time about something funny. Like, I'd always laugh. And I said to him, I said, Kevin, do you know that there are churches where the pastors are treated with respect? And he starts to laugh. He says, yeah, but those churches have good pastors. I said, okay, you won that round. He definitely won that round. But when we bought our ministry center, we were working on the grounds. There was had a lot of dirt brought in, and so we'd rented a Bobcat, and he knew how to use a Bobcat, so he's out working, and for literally a couple days, he's just out there working full-time for us for several days. And I remember once saying to him, like, thank you, Kevin. Just thank you so much for all the work you're doing. And he said, you don't need to thank me. I'm not doing this for you. And I so appreciated that. And George Munzing will sometimes say that when I thank him because of hearing about that is, yeah, I'm not doing that for you. The bottom line is maybe I'll forget to thank you. Maybe I won't even notice what you did. It's kind of like when I come home and Deb's cleaned and like, hey, Mark, did you notice this? And like, oh, yeah, no, it looks, yeah, that looks great. Like, nope, didn't notice at all. Well, all of us are called to serve, and we may not be noticed when we do it. God is not under obligation to reward us. And when we serve, we shouldn't think like, wow, look at me, look how great I am, especially those who serve maybe in more prominent ministries. It's even more easy to feel good about what you're doing. But we're all called to serve humbly like we talked about recently. In late 2000, Indra Nooyi was working late at PepsiCo. It was around 9:30 at night. Got a call in her office. It was the chairman. It was the chairman of the board who was calling to say, "You have now been selected to be CEO and president of Pepsi." Now, this was a time when very few women had broken that upper glass ceiling of really the huge companies. And so she goes home, and it's 10 o'clock at night. She walks in the door. Her mom was staying with them at the time. And she goes in waiting to give this amazing news. And her mom says, "We need milk. Go get it." And she said, "It's 10 o'clock at night." And her mother responded by saying, "Yeah, go get milk." She says when your mom tells you to do something, you do it. And so she said, I went, I got the milk, came back, and she said, I sort of banged it down on the countertop, and I said, I had big news for you. I have just been appointed president of Pepsi, and all you care about is this milk. She said, my mom looked at me, and she said, when you walk in that door, just leave that crown in the garage. Because you're the wife, you're the daughter-in-law, and the mother of the kids, and that's all I want to talk about. Anything else, just leave it in the garage. Wow. Now, first of all, parents, the proper response is, wow, I'm so proud of you. That's awesome. But the reality is that God is not looking for people who are like, wow, I'm so impressed by you. God's looking for servants who just do what they've been told to do. Servants check their ego at the door. They leave it in the garage. But we live in a culture where we're consumed with our own rights, with glory. You know, it's all about of us. But Christ followers must reject this attitude of entitlement, thinking we have certain privileges we deserve. Romans chapter 11, the Apostle Paul said this, who has ever given to God that God should repay them? For from him and through him and for him all are all things. To him be the glory forever. Amen. So we have never done anything for God that he should be like, wow, boy, if you hadn't done that, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was talking to the angels up here in heaven like, wow, if Mark doesn't pull this off, we're in trouble. There's nothing I've ever done. There's nothing you've ever done that God should have to repay us. He sent his son to die for us. That's more than enough. Well, in his parable, Jesus was not saying it was okay for masters to misuse their servants. That wasn't his point. His point was we're all called to serve with no excuses, expecting no thanks. Let me clarify something. It's not wrong to show appreciation. Matter of fact, it is important. The Bible talks a lot about encouraging one another. Okay, so this is not like, hey, I don't need to say thank you. I don't need to be grateful. It's Thanksgiving Day. That'd be kind of an anti-Thanksgiving Day message or weekend message. But what he's saying is just that when we serve God, we shouldn't expect to be thanked because it's what we're called to do. Well, Luke chapter 17, verse 10, Jesus concludes, so you also, when you have done everything you were told to do, should say, we are unworthy servants. We have only done our duty. So you also means, hey, just like this story I've told, so the same is true of you, that you're to be a servant. Instead of feeling entitled, we need to see ourselves as unworthy servants. The idea in the Greek is that we are unworthy of any praise. It means no one owes me anything extra. It's like when we pay our taxes. IRS ever sent you a thank you note? You know, Piscataway has never once called to just say, hey, Mark, I just want to thank you and Deb for the over $8,000 a year you pay in property taxes. We're so thankful for that. No, it's due, and if I don't pay it, they can put a lien on my house. So we need to understand that God is God, and we're called to serve him. Piscataway isn't going to thank me, and we need to go through life understanding that when we're called to serve, at times people may not thank us. Maybe you help someone, and they never even really realize all that you did for them, or they're never grateful for it. You're still called to do it. Former quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles and Super Bowl most valuable player Nick Foles got to play late in the 2017 when the starter for the team, Wentz, was injured. And so because Carson Wentz is out, he gets the team to the Super Bowl. Nick Foles wins the Super Bowl with his team. He gets the most valuable player award. I mean, this guy's at the top of the world. The next season starts, and the other quarterback's still injured, so he's in the first two games. And then when Carson Wentz feels better, game 3, Nick Foles goes back to the bench. And a lot of people were upset. Like, this guy won the Super Bowl. He was the most valuable player in the Super Bowl, and we're going to bench him? Well, here's what he said when people were surprised by how he seemed to be okay with being relegated to the bench. In his book, Believe It, in verse 2018, he said this. He says, what they saw as a riches, wins the Super Bowl, to rags, sitting on the bench story, I see as part of God's divine plan. I've said all along my desire is to play for God's glory, not mine, and that's exactly what I plan to do. By the way, I'm a Cowboys fan. I dislike the Eagles, and dislike would be understating it. But that year I was rooting for them to win because Carson Wentz, the guy who got injured, was a Christian. Nick Foles, the guy playing, a Christian. They had multiple Christians on their team. There was a picture of a baptism they did at a pool. Like, it was, you couldn't root against these guys. I do now, because the Christians are gone that I know of. So anyway. He says this, my unique path from backup quarterback to Super Bowl MVP, then to backup again, is a powerful message to share with people. And God has given me an ideal platform to do that from. To cheerfully return to a backup role after reaching the pinnacle of the sport contradicts everything the world tells us about success, fame, money, and self-worth. To me, it's a tangible reminder that you are called to humility and to a life of service. Some people might think I deserve a better deal, but it's not what I deserve. It's never been about that. The truth is, I've already been given far more than I deserve: a wonderful family, a job I love, grace, forgiveness, great friends and coaches and teammates. Everything I have is a gift from God, and I'm thankful for it all. I am where I am now because of God's grace, and I'll continue to follow wherever He leads. Amen. One of the best biblical images of this single-minded resolve to go after God and to obey Him and do what He wants is found in Psalm 123. We read this, as the eyes of slaves look to the hand of their master, as the eyes of a female slave look to the hand of her mistress, so our eyes look to the Lord our God till He shows us His mercy. Thankfully, we don't have slavery in America anymore. But we know that slaves were at the mercy of their owner. They needed to do exactly what they said. So the idea Jesus is saying is, here's the servant, and when the master says come, then they're to come. They keep their eyes on their master to see, what do they want me to do? It's like if you're ever at a really high-end restaurant. I don't go to them, but I've seen it in movies. And the waiters and waitresses are watching, and when you finish something, they take that plate away because you're done with it. Their eyes are on the person. That's what we're to be doing. It reminds me of what Samuel said, this young boy who heard God's voice calling in 1 Samuel chapter 3, and he said, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." The founder of the Navigators was once asked, how can you know if you really have the attitude of a servant? He said, you know you're a servant by how you act when someone treats you like one. When you're treated like a servant, how do you respond? When people act like, that they deserve what you did, does it make you mad? Again, are you a volunteer or are you a servant? That's the question that we're really looking at here. It's one of obedience. Am I going to serve myself, or am I going to serve others? The servant does their duty out of devotion to the master. So we need to be involved in service, not serve us. How do we do this? We choose to be a servant, not a volunteer. I read that there's a T-shirt that says that, yes, the world really does revolve around me. And you've probably met people like that who just think everything's about them. Servants are not like that, though. The Lord always equips us to serve. Everyone is called to do it. To serve in our homes, those that we live with. To serve in our neighborhoods, those around us, to show them Christ. Whether at work or at school or with a mom's group, to look, how can I serve? And then in our church, Lord, what role do you have for me? The Lord equips His people to serve. I would challenge you to check out some ministries. If you're not involved in service, God wants to use you. Grace Alliance needs servants, not people just to fill some slots. We have ministry needs, so what can you do? Yeah, I was encouraged this week when I met and talked with the other guitarist standing next to me. He's been coming for a couple of months, and we spent some time together and found out, I already heard from him the first week. He went to Nyack College, which is the Christian college my wife went to. He then went on to the Alliance Seminary, which is the seminary Glenn and I both graduated from, and has a real heart for ministry and was just excited to join with us, and was also sharing about some other gifts he has, and that's exciting. So the question is, what's God calling you to do? Do you like kids? We have junior church. They left so that their parents can enjoy the service, and honestly, so we can enjoy the service more. And also so the kids do not have to listen to me droning on and on and on. Instead, they get a kid's message. Just once a month, you go out for 40 minutes and you serve children. If you can do that, that's a great ministry. Elizabeth Vega would love to hear from you. Either as a teacher, we have curriculum we give you, you just kind of follow it, or as a helper. We need people in this building. Every morning, this Sunday morning, this gets set up. It gets torn down afterwards. We have greeters at the door. Are you friendly? Be a greeter. If you're not, please don't. The worst thing in the world is like, hi, But if you're friendly, then be a greeter. If you're not friendly, we need security people. We have security people that we use. And so, if you're like grumpy, be a security person. Now, I want to say Lenny Jenkins heads it up, and he's like the sweetest guy you'll ever meet. So, but God can use you in so many different ways. Our deaconesses are going to be setting up in just a few weeks for our Friends Day, where after the service we'll have food and we'll invite our friends to stick around. The message will be gospel-centered, and you can help them. We need meals sometimes brought to those who've had a surgery or those who've had a loss. So there's many ways you can serve. Come talk to me if you want to know. But God is calling all of us to be servants for Christ. You may feel like your plate is full, but I was challenged by these words by Calvin Miller, who's a pastor, an author, and a speaker. He wrote this, and I close with this, although when I say that, it's fairly long. So, but I want to say I close so that you'll wake back up again and be like, oh, it's almost over, finally. By the way, I am very careful not to say and in conclusion, because I remember hearing sermons, and they'd be 15 minutes later, and you just feel like, they'd robbed you, so this is in conclusion. He says this: I was coming back from ministering to 3,000 students. They showed up everywhere for a whole week, and we got no rest. He says, finally you're on the plane, and you think, oh, Lord, thank you that I'm moving away from that place. And because the Bible is the last desperate defense, you put it up around your face. When you have your Bible around your face, everyone will leave you alone on the plane. It's a frightening specter. Even the flight attendants won't offer you peanuts. I said to the Lord, Lord, please, I just want to be alone for 2 or 3 hours before I get back to Omaha. But I became of a young man next to me crying. He looked about 19, and again I said, Lord, he's not mine. My sinners are on the ground in Omaha. But he kept crying, and finally I put down my Bible, and I said, son, I don't know what's the matter, but if there's anything I can do to help, I'd like to. Well, the young man told him that the day before, his mother, his father, and his younger sister had died in a car accident. Suddenly, he says, my heart grew very still and silent, and then I felt the pain. I turned to him and I said, I don't know what you must be feeling. I can't imagine this, but I know someone who understands it perfectly. And he took that Bible and he shared the truth about Jesus, and this young man received Christ. But he says, that wasn't my last act. He said, I got off the plane. The young man had further to go. But I called someone I knew and asked him to meet him at the plane when he landed. He needed help that day. You see, the world is mine. I can't brush off somebody I don't know. Jesus is calling all of us to serve. Here, but also out there. We're not volunteers. You're like, oh, here, we're going to give you a T-shirt, pat on the back. Thanks, that's wonderful. Yeah, whenever you feel like it. No, we're servants. That when God calls us, we say, Lord, it's not a good time for me, but you're the master, and I'll obey. Let's pray. Lord, help us to have the kind of heart that a servant has. Lord, that we understand no one owes us anything. Lord, that you don't owe us because of what we've done. Other people don't have to say thank you to make it worth our time. Lord, help us to seek the applause of heaven, to listen to our Father, and to want nothing more than to hear you say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Lord, make that our heart's desire. Holy Spirit, break through the hardened hearts that so often we hold on to. Father, we hear you calling to us and we ignore it. Sometimes our hearts are so hard we don't even hear it anymore. Lord, soften us. God, change us so that we will long to serve you, so that we'll long to be used by you. Lord, I thank you so much for Jesus Christ who gave his life for us. Because of that, Lord, there's nothing we could ever do that could ever repay it. So remind us that we have simply been called to serve you out of love, out of gratitude, not because we're trying to earn what you have done. That's impossible. but because we're thankful for God and what your love has done for us through Christ Jesus our Lord, whose name we pray this in.